I'm your African history teacher, Professor Hicks, signing off for a second time today. Excuse me, let me clear my throat. And as promised, I want to discuss the Saqqara Pyramid. I mistakenly named it the Bent Pyramid. It is not the Bent Pyramid. We're going to talk about the Step Pyramid as created by the great polymath Imhotep, and materialized, I should say, Imhotep designed it, created it, put it in its implementation, and of course helped it materialize into what we call today the Saqqara Pyramid of Saqqara. The Saqqara is the area, of course, that it was built in. So let's get to it. So the Pyramid of Saqqara usually refers to the Step Pyramid of Djoser, the world's first large-scale stone building and the earliest pyramid in Egypt. Remember, I mentioned to you earlier in an earlier video that one of the reasons many of the Arab conquestors or conquerors, Persian, Greek, Romans, cannot lay claim to being Egyptians because those important monuments called pyramids, those significant spiritual as well as architectural masterpieces, were not created by those conquerors or invaders. Those pyramids, those monuments, were all created by African Egyptians in a period where there were no Europeans in Egypt. Let me say that again. When there were no Europeans in Egypt, it will be a long time after those pyramids were built that Europeans, as we might know them today, because technically at that point there was no Europe, but in order to have a frame of reference, I'm going to call them Europeans. Those are the Romans and the Greeks. They did not consider themselves in that period of ancient history to be Europeans. But we know that the colonizers corrupt all information that they get. And of course, they're going to call this little place that wasn't a Europe at this time. It was just small fiefdoms and kingdom. They call it Europe. But anyway, back to the story at hand. All right, so this pyramid called the Step Pyramid of Djoser, he was one of the pharaohs of the third dynasty. Yes, third dynasty. And here's the background. So he built these pyramids in 2670 BC, before the Common Era. Right? The architect who designed them, of course, was Imhotep. We just talked about that. And Djoser, the vizier or high priest and master builder. So designed by Imhotep, Djoser's vizier. So how would it be? So I'm trying to compare him to what we would know today, Imhotep. What we would know today as a frame of reference for you or context for you. So he would be the master designer of anything that had to be built. He was also a priest, Imhotep, a learned man, a master builder, and a priest. So I just have to emphasize that because we don't want to lose sight of King Djoser and Imhotep. Djoser was the pharaoh, Imhotep was a vizier. And you need to look up viziers when you get a chance. It's, gives you an idea of who he was, all right? But a master builder. He's often credited as the first recorded architect in history. Remember, when you go to Egypt, or if you go and you should go, you will see the first in everything. There is no history older than Egypt. No recorded history, let me be more precise. So when you go to Egypt, everything that you see, you're gonna have an aha moment. For example, I kept having aha moments because I come from a church background. My mom was very heavily involved in church, so was I. And many of the things I read in the Bible, which was written like thousands of years after this period, I find in Egypt. So, I had this aha moment. Said, wow, here are some references to the Bible right here, etched in stone on the walls. So that means, logically, that someone, whoever wrote about these or took these writings, had to take them after this 1 through 6 dynasty had already disappeared, or that had already passed. So someone went into Egypt, took this information, applied it to its own culture and religious practices, and then wrote as if it was theirs. So I have to preempt myself and make that known. All right, let's get back to it. So he is often credited, Imhotep, the designer, the vizier, the priest. He is often credited as being the first architect in history. Unlike the smooth-sided pyramids that came later, that's the pyramids of Giza, the step pyramid has a tiered structure. Now, sometimes he will call mastabas. If you go into Ethiopia or the Sudan, you'll see a mastaba. Normally, a mastaba was one step on top of another. So if you had an erector set, you had your base, which was square or rectangle, and then on top of it, a smaller rectangle. Those are called mastabas. So Imhotep perfected on that. He took that mastaba and began to create his Saqqara pyramid. So again, unlike the smooth-sided pyramids that came later, the step pyramid has a tiered structure. 6 steps rising to about 60 feet or 200 meters. So there again is why when you looked at that image, you saw it looking like steps, but very big steps. The purpose of this pyramid. This served as a tomb for King Zoser, but also as a symbolic stairway to heavens. You ever heard that music, that song called "A Stairway to Heaven"? This is where they got that concept from. Stairway to Heaven. It reflects the king's divine ascent. All right. Now remember, all pharaohs were believed to be divine. No, they did not claim to come from God and to be made by God and then, from his side and brought. No, the divination was within them, and they were messengers for God. So they were all considered to be divine, and they were held in high esteem by all the people. Okay, let's continue. So the purpose served as a tomb for King Doja, but also symbolic stairway to heaven, reflecting the king's divine ascent. Surrounded by a vast mortuary complex at Saqqara, which included courtyards, shrines, temples, and high walls. Let me stop again. When I got to Giza, not only did we see those 3 wonderful pyramids, but there were other smaller pyramids around, courtyards and temples that you don't normally see when you're looking at that image. The complex was designed to imitate the royal palaces of the king so the king could continue his rule in afterlife. This is where the first concept of afterlife comes from. It did not start in the Bible. It started in Egypt because the pharaohs in Egypt believed that this life was just temporary and some way to build on the next life. But everything they did prepared them for the next life, the afterlife, which is the pure life because it's energy. These bodies are just capsules. They're just capsules that contain the Ka and the Ba, the spirit and the soul. And that the Ka moves on to an energy field in our universe, cosmologically speaking. All right. So I said, now I'm sorry to repeat myself, but I'm going to bring us back. So the complex was designed to imitate the royal palace, so that the king can continue his rule in the afterlife. The symbolism was the pyramid shape itself was linked to a primeval, primeval mound of creation and the sun's rays. So the Egyptians believed that life started with emergence of a mound from the waters of Nun, emerged a piece of land that eventually became the earth, and they called it primeval mound of the creation and the sun's rays. While the step design may represent a literal stairway to heaven. So one more time. The symbolism of the pyramid shape itself was linked to the primeval mound. And I don't want to get into creation now, but in the creation story of Egypt, a mound emerged from the waters of Nun. Just remember that. We'll come back to that. While the step, that step design represented a stairway to heaven. It marks a transition from the mastaba, we talked about that, mastaba tombs, rectangular mud brick structures, to true pyramids, and set the precedent for the Giza pyramids later to come. Now, the mastabas were made, and I didn't mention before, but I should, of mud bricks. This is why Imhotep is the first one to use stone. Okay, mud bricks was not good enough for these master builders and this master builder. So they found something that would last for a lifetime, because they did not think in the here and now. They thought in the here and now, but their worldview was the future. Their worldview was the future. So the Egyptians, knowing that they would leave this information for the legacy of the world, they etched it in stone and built in stone, because they knew that stone would last forever. Very important to Egyptian thought and worldview, the use of the stone. The first people in the world to use stone were the Egyptians. Right, and I think, again, I don't want to get too far. I think that sets the stage for the next video. Again, remember, all of these stone structures were not built, or should I say, ended their creation. Their creations were ended after the sixth dynasty. 1 through 6 are what we call the pyramid building age. 1 through 6 dynasty. Okay, I'm going to be very specific about that. Nothing after the sixth dynasty, nothing was built. There were no white people in Egypt at that time. And this has been proven through architectural excavations, archaeological excavations, through biological melanin content that the great Theophilo Banga and Dr. Diop did so well, in showing that the skin, just a small piece of skin from Ramesses II, showed that he had a melanin content that no European has. Melanin is what makes you dark. It is the thing that makes Michael Jordan jump. It is the thing that makes black athletes so superior in the athletic field, and allows them to do those wonderful things that we ooh and ah about when they do them. That is melanin. That is why Europeans most of them cannot emulate those types of physical feats, because they lack the melanin. Not that they don't have any, but they lack the melanin content in order to do that. And by the way, you should go on the market and see the cost of melanin, because it also is sold and marketed. It is weighed just like gold is. And right now, I believe I read something the other day that it's more valuable than gold. as far as marketing, economic marketing. Yes, there are conferences held on melanin that most people don't even know about. Yes, many of the European uh, uh, intellectuals as well as the marketeers are having melanin conference to decide how to use this incredible material that we have. So melanin is important to understand was essential to building those pyramids, and that it was essential in knowing what people were in Egypt during that time. All right, and I think that's going to be it for right now. We're moving on a little further than I'd like to go, but it's okay. We'll be back again. And I think I covered two of those images, and that might be it. I'm not going to talk about the Pyramid of Giza, the wonderful image that I got 1,000 views on. 1,000. That's not on my Facebook site anymore. I will begin to put some images back there, but right now I have to focus on my channel. So please subscribe to my channel. Please subscribe to my channel. Please like it. Again, for the next few weeks, I'm going to be focusing back on my history and not so much on my image displays. So please come, subscribe, like, and share. Okay, and today is again Sunday, October 5th. It's about 15 minutes before 1, and I'll be signing off, and might be coming on one more time today after I review my notes to see if I covered everything as far as the images. I think I didn't talk enough about the Nile, the east and west part of the Nile, so I think that might be my next